Hey everyone, I'm Sagnik and I'm the co-founder and CTO at WorqHat. And today, as promised, we are here with the first ever lecture on the WorqHat Learners Academy, where we talk about how you can build your own AI-based applications using WorqHat AI endpoints. So today we'll be primarily working on a natural language to code translator. So we released WorqHat's AI endpoints around 2.5 months back as a early testing for developers. And over the period of 2.5 months, we've received a lot of feedback from the developers on how the product should be improved and how we can go ahead and make it better for business use cases. So over the period of time, we have improvised on the model, we have added few more use cases, we have optimized it for code generation, and a lot of things have happened on the back end. And today, we are going to build our own AI based application where we can convert our natural thoughts, our natural languages in different, it can be in any dialect that you want it to be. You can write it in Hindi, you can write it in Bengali, you can write it in English, and the code translator will actually create the code for you right within the browser. Now, we are developers too, and we wanted to make sure that accessing this AI models and API should be flawlessly easy. That is why we have made sure this AI models are accessible from any code base, be it you are working on a Ruby server, Ruby backend, a Node.js backend, a Golang backend, or even if you're just building it on top of simple front-end codes like Next.js or React.js. All of it is going to be accessible from any of the domains you want to work with. Now, in this course, we'll be mainly covering three main topics. The first thing that we'll be covering is how you can actually start working with WorqHat AI endpoints. And we'll be doing it with a simple Node.js server. Moving on, we'll also be working on a simple Next.js application where we can build our main AI code translator application and we can deploy it to a cloud-based hosting. Maybe you can say we can deploy it to GitHub Pages or we can deploy it to Vercel. For the for this tutorial, we'll be deploying it to Vercel. And then the third thing that we'll be working on is how we can submit this project to WorqHat so that you can get certified. WorqHat WorqHat will be running this WorqHat Learners Academy as a certificate course, which means that whenever you work on any projects with us, whenever you complete a project with us, or you follow a tutorial and complete a project, and you submit it to us, we will make sure that we run it on our end. We come back with the feedback of how it can be modified, how you can make your project better. We get to give you a chance to sit with the team to understand what changes can be done with the project, and then we go ahead and certify you, provide you with a certificate stating that you have successfully completed this project. Because we want to make sure that any skills that you learn, anything that you learn in artificial intelligence and machine learning should be something that you can showcase to people through LinkedIn, Twitter, and Instagram. So that's all about what we are going to do here. Now, when we talk about creating a project where you can generate code from natural language, one of the major examples that we see here is GitHub Copilot. And there are many organizations who do not want to use GitHub Copilot and they want to build their own custom based application because there is a thing that we look into as security and data privacy. So WorqHat does not retain any of the data or use any of the data that you provide to them as a part of his training data set. So there are two ways to go about with it. If you get a request from an organization that please build me a code translator or a code completion application because we want to use it internally. Now, one thing that you can do is you can go to the GitHub, you can go to the web, get hundreds of databases of different code bases, the different types of coding languages, the different code snippets that have been written by the people already on public GitHub repositories, and you can then push all of these into a deep learning model, run neural networks on top of it. You have to go through a longer training process, then test that entire data set, then test the training model, and it's a long thing that you have to do. You have to spend a lot of time, you have to spend a lot of energy, have a lot of people who can work on this, and there are a lot of things that comes into play. But all of it sounds so difficult, and that is why we at WorqHat wanted to make it easier for you. We came up with AI endpoints so that you can just send a request, the WorqHat AI does the heavy lifting and the difficult work for you, and they come back with a response stating that, yeah, here, this is the code that you wanted, and this is how you can go ahead with it. So before we talk about anything else, let's get started with how you can build an application with WorqHat AI, and let's get started. So again, a reminder: once you complete this project, please make sure that you follow the entire guidelines of how you can submit this project to WorqHat in order to get certified. So let's get started. Cheers. So for the entirety of this project that we'll be working on, we will be following the guidelines that we have provided on learn.workhat.com. This is to make sure that I will be writing down the same code in this tutorial that we have actually noted down and written on the main tutorial blog as well. But before we get started, we also have our own Discord community where we talk to a large number of developers every day, and the developers also get a chance to talk to the get a chance to talk to the internal team that has actually built WorqHat. This not only helps you to understand how such large language models work on the back, but you can also get additional help from the team. You can discuss with different your different developers in the community, and you can brainstorm on different projects together and also have a good time. So please make sure that to join us on Discord, follow us on our social channels at LinkedIn, Instagram, and subscribe to this video. And now let's move ahead with the tutorial. So before we get started, you can just click on the get started button, and you can actually read about what the LLM Academy or the Learners Academy that we are working on and how we want to make NLP, AI, and ML easier for developers across the world. But let's not go deeper into this. Maybe we can come up with another video where we describe about different LLM models that are available, how LLM models work at the back end, and that can be a scope for another different video again. So starting off, let's start off with the main project that we're going to work on, and that is the natural language to code translator. So this is what we are going to be building today. Now, as I talked to you before, now it's very important that we also move ahead with how the market trends are going, and it's very important for us as developers to learn how to build AI and ML applications that are actually useful. So today we'll be working on a code translator project, and if you want to go ahead and see how the real project looks like, you can click on the view project button, and this is how your project is going to look like. We are going to take an input question over here. We are going to select a language from a list of available languages. That can be either C++, Java, Python, JavaScript. You can give any list of languages that you want to give to it. And then we also have a code editor over here. This has been powered by Monaco Editor by Microsoft, and we'll be discussing a lot about how we can do this entire thing on your own. So it's time to get started with the code bases. But before we go ahead with it, we will have a bit of understanding of what WorqHat AI is and what the AI con models are. So WorqHat AI was an AI model that was internally generated or created by us by training it over a large amount of content from both the internet and through public repositories. Now, what we do is we want to make sure that these AI models are easier to access for every developers across the world. And that is why we have made sure that any developer, be it no matter their experience level or the stack that they're working with, they should be able to build on top of WorqHat AI. And that is why we came out with a very detailed documentation. You can access the documentations in depth by visiting devs.workhat.com. I'll just test.workhat.com. And here you will understand about the different AI models that are available, the different ways on how you can create, how you can access the endpoints of these AI models, and what are the different kinds of projects you can build on top of it. Now, let's get started with a basic understanding of how you can add WorqHat's AI and the icon model. Now, for icon, we have got two different models, the V2 and the V3 models. The V2 model supports up to 20,000 words in a single request, whereas the V3 model is much more powerful, but we consider it to be a bit slow. And but when you're working with something that requires a lot of creativity and needs to put in a lot of thought, and you need to have it to understand some certain context within the text, that is when we ask users to go ahead with the V3 models. But for most use cases, for most standard use cases for programming, for most use cases where you want to create sample content or sample projects, I think the V2 model works good enough for most people. So it's again up to you which one you want to go ahead with and which one you want to use, be it the V2 model or the V3 model. So before we get started, first you need to get your API key and the ORG key. Again, as we have built WorqHat to be mostly suitable for business use cases, you can divide your project into multiple workspaces to make sure that your workspace codes remain completely separate. This means that one code base that you're using for, say, organization A does not mess with the other code base that you're using for organization B. And we do believe that this will help you to, separate, keep your projects separate from each other and help us to make sure that you get the top-notch developer experience. So how do we get started with the WorqHat API key? So in order to get started with the WorqHat API key, what we'll do is we will visit the workhat.com website. I'll open it up on the https workhat.com. Once you visit the workhat.com website, you can actually go ahead with the get started with APIs, and you can sign up using Google or Microsoft. I have my own login account already, so I won't be signing up again. So I'll just go ahead and sign in. So I'll just sign in with my email ID and password. And this is how your workspace actually looks like. Now, before you can get started with it, these are some of the sample workspaces that I built before recording this video, because we have to test out how things work and some of the scrappy work that we do at our backend. But again, when we are working on different tutorials, I'll be again creating a workspace so that you know how to build a workspace and how we can go ahead with it. So you can just go ahead and create a workspace and name this as Natural Code Translator. Translator. I'm so sorry. I'll just bring the T apps, C capital, and N capital. I can choose a data center. This completely depends on where you're based out of. If you're based out of somewhere in India, you can go ahead with the Asia South data center. If you're so located outside India, you can choose any data center of your choice. Now we have divided into multiple data centers to make sure that you can access the endpoints at a faster rate, because each of these data centers can reach out to different locations on a different ping rates. So I'll just, as I'm based out of India, I'll go ahead with Mumbai, and it automatically creates a domain for me. Now I'll just go ahead and create. For now, we can start off with the free trial. We have gone ahead with the very decent free trial for you, which includes around 10,000 words in a 10,000 free words for the V2 model and around 5,000 free words for the V3 model, which gives you a chance to go ahead and try out the projects, build out different kinds of projects on top of it. Now, if you're building something that's very, very interesting, or you're working on a startup idea, please do feel free to reach out to the WorqHat support team on Discord or via email, and we'll be glad to set you up with certain credits. So I'll have to sign in again. So I'll just sign into the WorqHat app, and you have to sign in using the same email ID and the login password that you had used before. So suppose you signed up with, say, email abcs@workhat.com and password as 123456. Please make sure that you use that email ID to log into every workspace. This helps us to make the platform much more secure and make sure that your data remains private and is not accessible to anyone else outside the application. So then we can start off with building our own applications with our API. You can try out the APIs in the playground as well. So when you go over there to the API playground, you can see the different templates that are present over here, and you can generate the code directly over here by selecting a language of your choice. This creates a ready-made code for you. But right now we won't be going ahead with this. We'll create an application from scratch. So going back, I'll just go ahead and create my own organization key and API key. So as you can see here, this is the organization key that we have, and this is the API key that we have. The organization key helps us to keep a track of the workspace that the request is coming from, and the API key helps us to identify the user who's sending out the request. Also, as we mentioned, that we want to make sure that this code is applicable and accessible through any code bases, be it from front-end code or back-end code. It is very important that we take security much more seriously, and that is why we have to ensure that you whitelist the domains, be it you are working from a local host or you're working from your own hosted endpoints. Please make sure that you whitelist your domains before sending out a request, or else your request will get rejected. So I already have the API key and the org key over here, and I don't have my domain right now, so I can't whitelist it. So let's get started. And to get started, we can get started with any kind of code editor, but it's up to your choice. You want to get started with VS Code, or you want to use WebStorm or Sublime Editor, anything of your choice. Is you can use anything. So for this use case, what I'll be doing is I'll be mostly working with GitHub Codespaces, as it helps us to start up a development server right within few minutes, and we don't have to upload any files on our devices. So what and GitHub Codespace, the advantage of GitHub Codespaces is that it is very, very similar to VS Code, and this gives you the exact key space nominations that we use on VS Code itself. So I'll get started on GitHub Codespaces, and I think I have a GitHub Codespaces ready somewhere. So right, my GitHub Codespaces is ready over here. So what I can do is I'll just open up the tutorial as well on the side. And where's my tutorial? Right, here's my tutorial. So what is the first step that we need to do? Is first step that we need to do is we need to create a Node.js app. So the mkdi might Node.js app. The mk But before you get started, please make sure that you install Node.js from the official Node.js documentation. To do that, you can just type nodejs .org, and you can download the most stable version 18.6.16.1. WorqHat AI endpoints are accessible across every version of Node.js across every code base. So you don't need to worry about which version you're currently working on. So moving on, first we need to create our my Node.js app. So we can just type mkdir my Node.js app. What does mkdir stand for? Mkdir stands for make directory. That is, it is going to create a folder for me in the folder in the VS Code editor that we have. So I can just paste mkdir my Node.js app, and as you can see, my Node.js app folder got created in my terminal. So what I can do is I can move this to one side and I can open it on another side like this. And I think this will help me to, uh, get the code easier for you. Right. Now, next what we can do is we need to go to the newly created directory that we have. So I'll just cd into my application, that is my Node.js app, and I'll go in there. Now what I need to do, I need to start off an Node.js project within it. So in order to start off a Node.js project, once you have installed Node.js, you will also get npm packages along with it. So what does npm do? Npm helps you to download external dependencies that you can use within the application itself, so that you don't have to build the wheel yourself, but you can use existing application interfaces that you already have in order to build out your projects. So what I'll do is I'll start off an npm project, npm init and y tag. If you don't pass on the y tag, the application will be asking you for certain requests. So what we can do is we can start off with npm init itself. Now, okay, so the package name that I want to create is my Node.js app. It's okay. It's a version 1.0.0. That sounds good. Sample WorqHat AI application. Index.js sounds good. Test command. I don't have a test command. I can just put it at node index.js. What does test command do? If you run npm test, that is going to run the particular command. So when you run npm test, it's not going to do anything, but it's just going to run node index.js and run the node server on the backend. But we don't have any testing process on the backend right now, so I don't need to pass in a test command. So I don't have a Git repository as well. I'll keep it empty, no keywords. The author, I'll just put in my name here, Fanny Ghosh, license and IC, and this looks good. So yes, I can see that my this has been created. I'll go to the this file name and see my package.json is already ready. Right now, what I'll do is I'll run an npm install, and I need to install certain packages. So what are the packages that we'll be mostly working on? The packages that we'll be mostly working on are the request package. The request package allows us to send HTTP request to a backend. So what request package would allow you to do is you can send a API request to the backend server that we have at WorqHat, and the backend server at WorqHat will come back to you with a response so that you can show the code to your public. And we'll also be installing the .env files, .env package. Now, .env file is mostly a security use case that we actually look at. The .env package allows you to, keep the projects much more secure, and you can add all your org keys and API keys to the .env backend, so that these don't get pushed to the GitHub repository. Please make sure that you don't push the API keys and the org keys to GitHub repositories, as in such cases it will be accessible to everyone who will be accessing the GitHub repositories. So I'll just install each of this separately. So I'll copy this and I will put an npm install, npm install, yeah, and I'll also download the .env package, install.env, so I can see that both of them has been installed and the node models is visible. Now I need to create my index.js file and the .env file. So I can create it either by right clicking over here and the plus command, or I can do it the terminal way. I prefer doing it the terminal way because it is something that we have been doing for a very long time. So touch index.js and .env. So this will create two separate files for me. It will create a it will create a .env file for me, and it will create a .index.js file. So I do it, and I can see the two files that are available over here: the env file and index.js file. So does my directory look like this right now? I have got a node modules, I have got a .env file, I have got an index.js file, a package.json and a package.log.json. I think we are good to go over here. Now let's start working with the env file first. Env file is where we store our organization key and the API key so that we can access it on the index.js code and access it on the server without compromising the credentials. So we can create the env key. Env keys actually work in a key value pair where you declare a key and a value goes over here. So I have the two keys, WorqHat underscore API underscore key, which has the API key, and the WorqHat underscore org underscore key that has the organization key. So I'll just copy it and paste it over here. And I think this is good to go. And next what we can do is I need to go ahead and open my index.js file. So when I go ahead and open my index.js file, I need to do it in such a way so that now let's do it from scratch. I think that's better. So what I need to do first, I need to import all of my packages that I've created. So the first package that I need to import is constant. I do it constant. Uh, yeah, I'll do constant request because I have to use a request package to send the request to the API endpoint that I have. Constant request is equal to required request. So this is going to call the request package that we have installed already in the server using npm install. And I'll also be using the .env package. So I'll also be using a require and then .env, require.env, and I need to configure the env file as well. So it's .config and a function. So now I have already involved my both the packages that I've worked with. Now, when you have to work with the WorqHat AI endpoints, you have to make sure that you pass in certain details to the backend. So the certain details that we ask you to pass to the backend is you have to pass in your API keys as headers, the ORG keys as the headers. The kind of content that you're sending, now you can send content. There are various types of content types that you can send to servers, but WorqHat works only with JSON type contents. If you send any other kind of content, it will automatically get rejected and the request will not be processed on our backend. So apart from that, need to also send the queries that you want the AI model to process and the URL endpoint that we'll be working with. So let's declare each of these separately one by one. So the URL that, okay, yes, we have to declare the API key and the ORG keys as well. So I'll copy the WorqHat API key and the WorqHat ORG key and I'll paste it over here. Now, what does process.env do? The process.env actually gets the details from the env file. So if you can notice over here, the WorqHat API key is the key over here, and I'm calling the API key from here. Make sense? So this is how I'm declaring the values without compromising the API keys and the ORG keys that I have. Because whenever I push this code to my server or the GitHub repositories, I'll be pushing index.js, but I will not be pushing .env. So my credentials remain safe at all times. And then I need to declare the API URL endpoint that we will be working with. API URL endpoint. So my API URL endpoint is going to be this thing. If you want to go deeper into how these endpoints work and how you can work on top of it, you can always visit devs.worqhat.com to see what kind of details you can pass to the backend, what is the JSON structure that you can pass to the backend, the different endpoints that are available, and so on and so forth. Now moving on, you need to pass in the headers. As I mentioned, the only content type that WorqHat works with are JSON applications, and you need to pass in the API keys and the ORG keys to the backend in order to process it properly. So I'll declare the headers separately as well. And here are my headers. So I've passed in my WorqHat API key that I've called from the env file. I've passed in my ORG key that I've called from my env file again. And then I need to create a JSON structure and I need to stringify the entire content. That what does JSON.stringify actually do? So I'll just write down the code first so that it becomes easier for you. So I'll just go ahead with constant raw What is constant row? I'm creating a variable where I'll be, sending the JSON structure to the backend. JSON.stringify, and JSON.stringify will create a string command. Now in the string, I need to pass two, three things. First, I need to pass the question that I want to ask the AI model. So, hi, how are you? Hi, tell me more about you. Tell me more about you. And then I need to pass in whether I want to preserve history. Now, we have built WorqHat in such a way so that you can pass in past conversation in the form of key value pairs. You can pass in training data in the form of one-shot training. WorqHat AI models are capable of handling up to 20,000 words in a single request. Also, you are working on another larger model that allows you to train larger amount of data. Maybe you have large amount of PDFs. You want to send in over 100,000 words in the request. There's another model that is present for handling those requests as well, and you can check all of it out at devs.workhat.com. But for this use case, we don't need to pass in a lot of data, so that is why we can go ahead with a smaller model that can handle up to 20,000 words, because I think that is enough for creating the use case over here, because this is the use case that we'll be working with in this application. So, and I don't need to store any past history or preserve any conversation history over here. So I can pass the preserve underscore history as false, because I don't want to keep a history of what they keep a history of the conversation that's happening. If you want to keep a history of conversation that's happening because you're building out a chatbot, you want to try and send training data, you need to make sure that you convert this preserve history is equal to true, or add in certain training data in the form of arrays. More details about it in our documentation. And we will also control the randomness. Now we had to introduce randomness as a variable because we wanted to make sure that our AI models don't hallucinate. So this is a value between 0 and 1. The closer it is to 0, the more on point the AI model is going to be. The closer it is to 1, the more random the answers are going to be to the question that you ask. So I'll be putting it at 0.5, maintaining a decent central level. And I think uh, my content for the that I want to send to the AI model is ready. Now, let's start off with the main API part of it, where we send a request to the API model. So the request that we send to the backend has two different contains all these four things sent together in a single request. You need to set up a URL where you can send the request to. You need to send up the type of method that you are using to send the request. It can be a post method. It has to be a post method actually, because you're sending out a request and you're waiting for a response. So we send out a post request, and you have to pass in the headers and the content body as well. So I'll declare the content request options. As you can see, I'm actually following the tutorial that I have provided over here, and this makes it easier for you as well to follow along. So content request option, constant request options is equal to, I'll go ahead and pass in my URL. Sorry, I'll go ahead and pass in my URL as the URL that I have. I think is that URL. No, I created as the API URL endpoint. So while passing API URL endpoint, I will have to pass my method as well. So the method that I'll be using is a post method. The headers that I have created will be coming in. So the headers will be passed in as the headers that I created. These are the headers that we created. We'll pass in the headers now. And I'll have to pass the body as well. So body is nothing but the request or the content of the AI model that you want the AI model to process. That is what you have to send in as the body. So this raw is my body that I want to send to the model. So raw. This completes my request options completely. So now my model is ready to receive requests and send back responses. So how do we work with it? This is where the request package that we installed comes into play. So I'll just call the request module, and I'll say key send a request to these request options. Now these request options has a URL endpoint, so it's going to send a request to this URL endpoint with the type method of post, and it's going to send this headers and this body alongside it to process it. Now once I send the request, either of the three things can happen. It can either come back with an error, it is either or going to come back with a response, and when it comes back with a response, it's going to have a body. So in case we have an error, so I'll just pass these three callbacks over here. If you don't know what callbacks are, you can go ahead and search on Google on what callbacks are and how they are useful for sending requests and waiting for responses. But most applications generally have two callbacks to three callbacks. The two callbacks are generally error and a response. But here we'll be working with three different callbacks: the error, response, and the body, because that allows us to uh, make things easier. So error, response, and body. So my three callbacks are ready, and I'll be creating an arrow function over here. So now I can either wait for the response, or now I can either wait for the response. Once the response comes back, if the response is something that returns an error, I will have to find out why I'm getting an error. But if I'm getting back a body, I can console that. I can log that body to my terminal to see whether the answer that I'm getting is something that I was looking forward to. So I'll run a if case over here. So if it is not an error, it is not an error, and the response has a status code of. Now, what are status codes? Whenever you send a request to a API server, an API endpoint, they come back with a status code of 200 or 201. Each of these two XX endpoints that we have, two XX status codes that we have, these all mean different things. But the 200 endpoint or the 200 status code is used in order to certify that the request is a successful request and the response that you have gotten is the correct response. We often receive a 4xx response whenever the request fails. That is, you can either come across a 401 response or a 402 response. More details about it in our documentation again, so you can actually go ahead and see if you're coming up with an error. Also, you can reach out to the team at the Discord community, and we will be more than happy to help you out in case of errors. So I think this is good to go, and I'll console.log the body over here to see whether my code works or not. Console.log body, and if I have an error, I will console.log the error. So I think this is enough to get started with, and the entire thing that I explained it to you over here has been explained over here separately as well, so you can understand what's going on, and it gives you a chance to read through and keep in mind. You can refer to this later on as well to understand while building on the different projects. So everything has been explained in detail for you to understand. So moving ahead with this, I will try. Okay, wait, I did not fill out the env thing, right? So I have to fill out the env code first. So where's my env files? I need to find my app again. Go to my yeah. So app.workhat.com dashboard. I need to get the API keys. I forgot to get the API keys by talking to you. So I'll just sign in again. It has my credentials already. So I will sign in, and sorry, I don't need you. Thank you. This one was the one, right? Yeah, this was the project that we were working on. I have to log in again. So I will just go. Also, in case you remember the organization URL that you have created, you can log in directly as well by entering the organization URL. These URLs can be connected to your private URLs as well, which gives you a personalization option to make it internal tools for your for your organization as well. So I will move on to my dev tools. I can access the dev tools from here as well. Right, I have the organization key and the API. So I'll copy the organization key and I will put it over here. My organization key is ready, and I'll put the API key as well. Here's my API key. So I have put my organization key and API key, and I think we are good to go now. So what I'll do is I'll clear this console and start my index.js server, and let's see whether it comes back with a response or not. It takes a few time when you're building out your first project. It takes a few time to analyze the request that you've sent and come back with a response. And as we can see over here, there is a response that we have gotten back. So if you notice over here, we have received a request response with the ID of the request. The status is success, and the content has been response. Hello, I'm an AI language model designed to assist you with your task and answer and help you with any discussion. Like to know more, and I'll be glad to best you. And we also count the number of words that has been created or number of rows that has been processed during the request, because this is something that allows us to keep a track of um, how many words you're using up. And unlike most AI models out there that are dependent on counting the number of tokens, they're mostly dependent on counting the number of words that you work with, which allows us to bill you much lesser than most traditional AI models out there. So I think as far now, my Node.js application is good to go. So now we can start working off with the Next.js application. So this is the response. This I have gotten this response over here. Now, as you see, since my randomness was set to a much higher level than the randomness I set over here during the creation of this blog, the answer was much more detailed and much more elaborate. But this is not always going to be the case, because AI models are constantly learning, and the more the randomness, the more the because and this is something that we are working on on a much priority basis, that how we can reduce the amount it hallucinates even when users enter a higher randomness value. But as of now, we can mention that this model is one of the most stable versions of the models. So I think this covers up. Most of the part of how you can get started with WorqHat AI and Node.js as a beginner, and how you can send requests to the WorqHat's AI endpoints and go ahead with creating your own applications with it. In our next video, we'll be covering and since this was something that we are covering on a larger basis, we had to break this video down into two different parts. So in the next video, we'll be covering how you can go ahead and create a natural language to code translator in part 2 of this video that will be coming out in the next 2-3 days. So till then, get started with how you can add WorqHat AI to your Node.js applications and start working on top of it, so that when we go ahead and implement this in our Next.js application, it is much more easier for you to work on top of and to create different kinds of application on top of it. And till then, if you have any questions or you want to find out ways in which you can modify this, in which you can use find out different use cases for the AI models, for the APIs, or if you have any feedback for us, please do feel free to reach out to us on Discord. The link to the Discord channel will be provided in the description below. You can also reach out to us via our official email ID, and we'll be more than happy to help you out. So see you again in the next part of this video, where we discuss more into depth about how you can create a Next.js application out of it. Till then, stay safe, take care, goodbye.